Hello everyone and welcome to an all-new episode of the Robert Palace Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. And on deck for today's episode, you're going to get my instant reactions to NFL Week 6, which just concluded tonight with Sunday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Detroit Lions. You'll get my thoughts on that as well as other news going on around the NFL. You're going to get my recap of WWE Crown Jewel, which happened from Perth, Australia, Saturday morning. I got up super early to watch this event from WWE on ESPN. And then finally, we will get to my 90s Films Turns 30 movie this week. And that is the Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas co-led film, Assassins, enjoying its 30th birthday. I believe it was October 6th that it was released. I'm recording this on October 13th, so a couple of days past the 30-year anniversary date, but we'll talk a little bit about that and see how the movie has, if it's aged well since the 30 years it's released. So we'll get into that, and that's always a fun conversation to have about these movies that have turned 30, is to see whether or not they hold up today or if they were just a relic of their time. Now, usually on this show, we start off with the box office for the weekend. But before we get to that, I do have to announce that yesterday evening, or at least when I heard about it, we lost another film icon in Diane Keaton. Passed away at 79 years of age. She was one of my favorite actors to watch. Always a delight to see. Always a fun presence. You know, you think of all the classic films that she's done. You know, she was part of the Godfather series. Something's Gotta Give, which I tuned into last night. I own the DVD, and I'll do a proper farewell remembrance of her later on in the week. But I have to mention that was just huge in the film industry, and she's, you know, not as maybe big of an icon like a Robert Redford, who just passed not that long ago, but definitely someone that is a major influence on a lot of the Hollywood stars that we have today. Just a huge loss. She was an amazing talent and was always a delight to see on the screen, and it's sad that she's no longer with us and we won't be seeing any more movies. But she left a long-lasting legacy of films that you can go on in and check out. And I think when I do my tribute to her later this week, I'll do maybe like a top 5 of my favorite performances of hers, because it's easy to do the best movie, right? But I like to do, at least for Diane Keaton, I would like to do performances, because even if the movie wasn't as good, she was always a really good presence in it and always brought something to the table. So that'll come later this week as we celebrate the life of Diane Keaton, who passed away at age 79. All right, let's get to the box office this week. The report for October 10th through the 12th. Coming in at number 1 is Tron Ares, the $180 million budgeted movie. Brought in $33.5 million for Disney. Now, that is a little bit below expectations. I think the studio was probably guessing around the mid-40s to possibly 50s, so not a tremendous start for a big budgeted sequel. This is the third in the Tron franchise. I got to see it this past week, but you'll be hearing my review this week on Game Time at the Movies, so if you want to hear my thoughts on that, you'll have to tune into that podcast. But it was number 1 for the weekend, and not really putting a dent, as this is probably the first big movie of October. We'll see how the rest of the month goes, but not a good start here with Tron Ares. At number 2, we have the Channing Tatum led film Roofman, opening to $8 million. Now, this one only had a budget of around $19 million, so not a solid start for it. It's got a B score on Cinema Score, so it might hang around for a bit. This is from Paramount Pictures. They could use a big boost right now. They haven't really had much this year other than like Mission Impossible, and I think The Bad Guys 2 is from Paramount DreamWorks. Or I'm not sure who owns the rights to DreamWorks. It might be Universal. I could be not really sure on that. But $8 million is not bad for a movie like this, and I think good solid word of mouth will easily have it make up its budget in no time. And we don't have any international numbers for this, so right now it just stands at $8 million for the weekend. At number 3, One Battle After Another, dipping 39%. This movie slowly just sticking around. Again, it's got a lot of critic reviews. It's going to be in the Oscar conversation come early next year, bringing in another $6.6 million for a total domestically of $54 million. And internationally, it's brought in 83 for a worldwide total of $138 million. I believe this movie was budgeted at somewhere around $150 million. So we're getting close. I don't know how much it's got to make to turn a profit, but the fact that it's still, again, it's not dipping as much. So this is good for this movie, although not outstanding numbers. Like $54 million is pretty good for a movie like this. At number 4, Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie, bringing in another $3.3 million, dipping only 37%. Not a lot of kids' movies out right now, so if you're going to see a kids' movie, this is probably the only one to go see. It's brought in a total of $26 million for Universal Pictures. That's, it's whatever. It's an October movie. And at number 5 is Soul on Fire, bringing in $3 million. That is from Affirm Films. I believe it's a faith, religious-based film. True story. Usually these movies are, hit and miss. $3 million for a movie like this is not bad. And coming in at number 5 is not a bad feat for a movie like this. It's not a big studio movie, so still pretty decent. And that is the top 5 for the box office this weekend. Now, as it pertains to this upcoming weekend, my birthday weekend, ladies and gentlemen, I turned 39 this week. We got a couple of ones that I'm really looking forward to. We got After the Hunt, which officially releases wide. I know it's out limited in theaters right now. That's starring Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, among others. Good Fortune with Seth Rogen, Keanu Reeves, and Aziz Ansari. Nice comedy, fantasy movie. We don't get a lot of those these days, so that's going to be a good one to have out this weekend. But the number 1 movie of the weekend should probably be The Black Phone 2, which is a sequel to the original horror movie with Ethan Hawke, who's returning. I have never seen any of these movies and don't plan on to. And that's fine. I'm not going to be into every single movie that's out there. Maybe I'll watch this down the line when it's on Peacock or something, but this is not something that I'll check out in the theater. I do plan to see After the Hunt and Good Fortune. I may do a double feature for my birthday. I'll make a whole day out of it. But yeah, I do expect The Black Phone 2 to be number 1. Probably somewhere in the 20 to 25 million range. I'm not sure what the rating is on it, so I couldn't tell you. Because if it's PG-13, it's got a pretty good chance to reach that feat. And I know rating sometimes doesn't matter. You look at The Conjuring, that's rated R, and it's brought in almost $500 million at the box office. So it all just depends. I think the first Black Phone was pretty decent for when it originally came out. I think it made around $90 million domestically. Let me look that up real quick. Yeah, $90 million domestic, 71 internationally, worldwide, $160 million. Definitely worthy of, greenlighting the sequel. But we'll see how much popularity this has retained. I haven't heard much about this movie, since its original release. Usually you hear about, did you ever see The Black Phone in theaters? That one was pretty good. And we'll see how it does. But again, I do expect it to be number 1 this weekend. All right, folks, let's take a break here. When we come back, I'm going to recap NFL Week 6 and WWE Crown Jewel. This is the Robert Palace Podcast. We'll be right back.
You should be ready.
Ready for what? What are you saying happened?
It crossed the line.
But what actually happened?
Utter fabrication.
Did you know anything about this?
I did not do this. You did this to yourself. Am I not owed this?
I am a desperate man. Absolutely desperate.
I don't feel comfortable having this conversation with you anymore.
Not everything is supposed to make you comfortable.
After the Hunt. Rated R.
All right, welcome back to the show. After the Hunt, starring Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield, in theaters this Friday. Again, for my birthday weekend, I'll probably go do a double feature of this and Good Fortune. A nice drama, mixing it in with a comedy. It's a good combo there for my 39th birthday, nearing that big 4-0. Yikes. But anyways, let's get to NFL Week 6. Now, I know I'm recording this on a Sunday evening, going into Monday morning, and we still have the Monday Night Football games with the Bills and Falcons and the Bears and Commanders still to play. But for the most part, most of Week 6 is in the books. And let's start with the before we get to my two teams. Let's start with Thursday with the Eagles losing convincingly to the New York Giants. Jackson Dart, Scatabo, just injecting new life into this New York football team that hopefully is a fun watch, and hopefully they can build on something. And any team in the NFC East that can continue to build and make the Cowboys suffer more and more, I'm always up for that. But nice showing by them. I didn't really get to catch most of that game. I was watching Tron with Abraham and Jake, so I caught like the very tail end of this, but saw the highlights. I was very impressed by what this team is doing. And again, and I've picked the Giants the last couple of times. I'm not sure if I picked them in this game specifically, but sometimes, a change at the guard, in the quarterback position, vibes, that can do a lot for a team. And you're even seeing more of a pep in the step of Brian Daboll, the head coach. He's looked happier than he's ever looked. Even when Jackson Dart got hurt in a little bit during that game, like he was so just worried and even went to the tent to check on him, even though they're not supposed to do that. There's been memos sent out to make sure that teams are following the correct procedures when it comes to the blue tent. That has to be like a very independent checked on and making sure like players are okay to be cleared to go. But like I said, vibes, energy, everything trending in the right direction for the New York Giants and the absolute other direction for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll see if they can get it together. They're starting to feel a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover, even though they are the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, but it happens to the best of us. So something to keep an eye on there with the Philadelphia Eagles as the other teams in the NFC continue to ascend. So let's get to today's games. Let's start with my New England Patriots facing off with the New Orleans Saints. They won 25-19. They were coming off a huge win against the Buffalo Bills, and I knew this was something that we could not just rest on beating like Josh Allen and stuff. I know we're in the same division, and that's a big deal, but it's also about the rest of the season. How are you going to build on this? So this is, and I know the Saints don't have the best record, but they do put up a pretty decent fight. So I liked what I saw here from Drake May. 3 touchdowns. Slinging it all over the place. He seems very comfortable in this offense now, and Vrabel's got this team in the right position. What I was worried about was just and I've kind of been harping on this the last couple of seasons, but some of the officiating and some of the calls are just unbelievably bad. I went from, the Chiefs getting help from the refs a lot during last season, and then in today's game, I noticed it a lot. There was so many bad calls called on the Patriots that should not have been. Specifically, there was one where Drake May completed a amazing pass to Stephon Diggs by the sideline, and then they called like an offensive pass interference, but it was like the most like basic nothing. Diggs didn't do anything to warrant that call. And I even went like on Twitter to see like what the responses were to it, and everybody was like, "What kind of officiating call is this? This is bad." And this is not from just like the New England home base. Like I follow a lot of the beat reporters, but I also follow like a lot of the mainstream like people that I just like to follow and cover all of this stuff. And they were like, "This is just like some of the worst officiating we've ever seen in our life." So it's not just me being a Patriots fan like trying to just say like the refs are against us, but there was just very, very bad questionable calls in this game. But they ended up winning the game, so in the end that's null and void. So they're sitting at 4-2 right now. They're building on this, only one game behind the Bills, and they're going to meet again later in Foxborough. And if the Patriots can take that game to it as well as build on this and continue to win games, they can win this division and host a playoff game. And even if they don't win the division, I can see them still making it in as a wild card. The AFC is just decimated this year. Joe Burrow down, Lamar Jackson down, so it's kind of like up for grabs a couple of these spots. Like we know, Kansas City's going to get in, and Buffalo, and after that, it's really like a toss-up. Like there's a lot of teams in the running here that could just make a shot to get into the tournament. But we're still ways down the road. We're right here in the middle of October, and I always say like middle of October all the way to like Thanksgiving is when you really start to see which teams are going to emerge as the front runners, just to like kind of see like, oh yeah, I can definitely see that being a playoff team. We're starting to see some of that a little bit, but we still got some time to go. But good job on my Patriots here, 4-2. Let's get to my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield. I'm a little nervous with everybody starting to jump on this bandwagon a bit on Baker and this Bucs team, and how exciting and how explosive and just a fun team to watch. And I said this from the beginning of the season before it even started, and this is not just me being a homer, but I said, just watch. This is going to be one of the most offensively awesome teams in the entire league, and it's now starting to show. People are picking up on it. They're being covered more now. People are starting to pick Baker as a front runner for MVP. Like, oh man, like, not that I don't love my team being covered, but now the fact that everyone's kind of jumping in on it, man, I kind of wish we would go under the radar. Maybe the next loss we have will help, kind of cool down the fire a little bit. But the Bucs did win today, 30-19. It's the first game that they win that's not a close one, but and I like that. Me and my dad were discussing this. We want this team to also win, the games that they're supposed to, and win like convincingly, and not just having to do heroics in the final 3 minutes of the game or whatnot. While that's cool and stuff, like it takes years off your life getting excited for stuff like that. But let's dial it back a little bit. Let's get some convincing wins. One of the joys of being a Patriots fan for the 20+ year dynasty is that Brady and company would win the games that they were supposed to. Yeah, you had your nail biters, but then you had the opponents where you should beat them, and beat them convincingly. And the Niners didn't make this a game for a while, and they're completely decimated on their team. They're just, seems they're always cursed with the injury bug. Today they lost Fred Warner on the defensive side of the ball in a horrific play, and sucks to see him go down. And even their quarterback situation right now, Mac Jones is playing starter right now while Brock Purdy's hurt, and even he's dealing with his own knee issues. So, but I still liked what I was seeing from the Niners. This team fought it out to the end, but eventually injuries do catch up to you, and maybe they're going to catch up to the Bucs as well. I know they're winning, but they lost Emeka Egbuka, so they're down 3-star receivers right now, and Godwin, Edmonds, and Egbuka, and Baker was still pulling it off. That's kind of the reason why everyone's kind of jumping on that, like, oh, this guy's still winning regardless of the fact. But we're also continuing to lose pieces. We lost another offensive lineman, and that line's been decimated to begin with. I know it's going to get healthier as we go along, but eventually the injuries do catch up to you. So we'll see. They got a really good test in Detroit next week on Monday Night Football. That could be a possible playoff matchup, possible NFC Championship matchup. We're going to see what this team is really made of. Now, maybe the injuries catch up to them, and they drop one, or they overcome again, and then that's really going to just speak to the absolute depth that this team has, because, Baker's doing it with a bunch of rookies and a bunch of small names, kind of like the way Brady would do it in New England, but there's just such a different, vibe with Baker, and he doesn't just do it with his arm, he does it with his legs and, the attitude, and it's just, the team feeds off of that, and then the defense starts to make plays, and, it's just an overall great team effort from everybody, but it's all led by Baker Mayfield, and while I do believe in my heart of hearts, he's like the front runner for MVP right now, I kind of don't like that everybody else is on that train right now, so we'll see, but they did get the win 30-19, that puts them at 5-1, and I know we haven't talked about Detroit yet, but they did lose tonight, and right now that puts Tampa Bay number 1 in the NFC right now, so all things are great right now, but, I'm not, hatching my chickens yet. I'm not going to declare them, oh yeah, they're going to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to go to the NFC. They're going to be the number 1 seed. I'm not going to do that. It's a week-to-week league, and we still got a very long way to go, but what I'm seeing from this team is just incredible. This is awesome. Let's go around the rest of the league. Broncos got a win over the Jets today. Wasn't really impressed with them. 13-11. Their defense is absolutely stellar. I have them in fantasy, so that was a good pickup by me. But I'm still not overly too impressed with the offense here. We'll see. Denver defense is going to matter down the line, so that may help them get into the playoffs. But I don't know how deep this team can go with Bo Nix, because he's just kind of been up and down. He hasn't been like the way he has in his rookie years, so there's been a little bit of up and down. And again, it's not it's not the fanciest of football. It's not Bucs football, like offensively, but if the defense can keep teams to that low number, for the offensive side of things, and it'll be interesting. But yeah. Steelers coming off the bye facing the Browns. The Browns did ship off Joe Flacco, so it is down to just Dylan Gabriel and Shadir Sanders as the quarterbacks for this team, and it showed today with just especially Dylan Gabriel, just no touchdowns, threw over 50 passes today. I think he was like 23 of 52. Like, that's just insane. They lost 23-9. Steelers, man, 4-1. They're right up there in the top of the AFC. It's just a weird year, man. But the Steelers, always been known for defense. We can always count on that. But now they have a quarterback at the helm. And I know it's an old Aaron Rodgers, but he's still competent. He can still make the smart plays and not, turn it over or anything like that. He makes smart decisions. And if they can have just competent quarterback play and the defense steps up, this team, like, it would not shock me if they ended up in the AFC Championship game. And the way it looks right now, with the way it's going with the Bengals and the Ravens and the Browns are being the Browns, the Pittsburgh's going to end up winning this division, so they'll at least host a playoff game. But again, it wouldn't shock me if this team ends up in the AFC Championship game. Chargers beating the Dolphins today. Chargers getting a much-needed win with Kansas City, kind of like getting a little bit of its groove back. We'll get to their game in just a bit. But they're atop of the AFC West right now in the last-minute field goal against the Dolphins, who, Dolphins compete, but then they just, you see in their conferences, like, Tua not melting down, but just calling out players and stuff like that. So things may look good on the outside, but on the inside, you can tell, like, this organization is in disarray, and it's unraveling pretty quickly. But Chargers getting the win back. Their O-line still kind of decimated, and still waiting to get Joe Alt back on that O-line, and then Khalil Mack on the defensive side of the ball. So, but good for them on getting the win. And I need them to keep winning to keep pace with the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs are chasing them. Rams beating the Ravens today, 17-3. Rams got a little bit of a scare with Puka Nacua getting hurt during the second half of that game. Not sure what the status is of him at the moment, but if he goes down for a significant amount of time, that's going to definitely hurt the offense, because he is their biggest weapon. I know they still got Devontae Adams. They got that. What the Rams have going for them is that young defense, which is pretty stout. The Ravens, they gave up on Cooper Rush at one point, put in Tyler Huntley. They're looking for any type of answer. Couldn't run the ball at all. They had like 3 shots at the end zone from like the one, and they tried like their version of a tush push like 3 times, and they just couldn't get it in. So nothing's going right for this team. 1-5, really hard to come back from as far as like trying to make a run. Because let's say even if you do get Lamar back, like, your defense is completely shredded, and you could probably win some games, but at 5 losses already in October is a tough mountain to climb for any team. So I'm not ready to call it a lost season for the Ravens yet, but it does not look good. I would say their chances right now of getting into the playoffs are like at 30%, somewhere around there. I'm just throwing out a number, but it's a low number. Colts, another 5-1 team. Again, they're the surprise this season, right? It's between them and the Steelers, probably for the AFC side of things. Steelers, probably not so surprising, just because Tomlin's always got a winning record, and every once in a while they'll slip into the playoffs. But they've always been formidable, right? The biggest turnaround here has got to be the Indianapolis Colts, who are just like, they were pretty bad last year, and to turn it around already. I think they're ranked number 1 in the AFC right now, so they're the number 1 seed if the playoffs started today, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, just to kind of get you a feel for where we are, at least at the season at the moment, as far as like playoff picture. But they got a win in a very interesting game here with the Arizona Cardinals, headed by Jacoby Brissett, who stepped in for Kyler Murray, and he played pretty decent. I love Jacoby. I like to see all these past Patriots quarterbacks just kind of have like their moment to shine, even if it's just for a little bit. You see Jacoby Brissett, he's been around, he's been a journeyman now for a little bit, so it's nice to see him still get opportunities. You're seeing it right now with Mac Jones, who, despite their loss today, he still like can he knows how to deal that ball. He knows how to run an offense. So it's nice to see these guys still get opportunities. But they put up a good fight here against a good Colts team, running the ball well with Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones playing just the best football probably of his career. So got to give him props. I'm never going to call Daniel Jones by that one nickname that everybody does, but I do like the one that they've given him here in Indianapolis, and that's Indiana Jones. So props to them, and they're doing a good job. Shane Steichen, I'm happy for him. I've always been in support of that coach, and he's another one of those quarterback whisperers. I know it didn't work out with Anthony Richardson, but he's getting it done here now, so that's all that matters. Seahawks, another team that's interesting, and if I'm an NFC team, I don't want to see them in the playoffs again. My Bucks beat them last week, but it was a dogfight till the end, and they're very formidable and competitive. And I know their defense is hurt a little bit, but once they get players back, they're going to be a real big threat late in January come playoff time. And then the offense is stellar with Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp and Njigba. I think that's the other receiver out of Ohio State. Just incredible what he's doing. He's become a really big weapon for that team. So Seattle winning 20-12 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars were coming off a huge win Monday night against the Chiefs. So, and I predicted this on Game Time at the Movies podcast with Abraham Trevino. I said that the Jags would come down from that victory, and we saw that today. The inconsistency from Trevor Lawrence. So yeah, good win here by the Seahawks, bouncing back after that loss to the Bucks. And again, this is the one team I do not want to see in the playoffs. And, with the way things are going, they may be a team to get in. I know the NFC right now is a little bit tougher, I would say, than the AFC, but if the Seahawks get in, watch out, because on the road, they're good. So this would probably be a team, got to see how it shakes out in the NFC West, because the Niners barely suffered their second loss today, so they might be right on top with them. So that division's always a dogfight to the end. But if the Seahawks have to go from the road, this is a team I don't want to play. So just got to give it up. Seahawks, really good team. The Dallas Cowboys losing today to the Carolina Panthers. Now, I would have preferred a Cowboys victory because that helps out my Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC South. But good to see the Dallas lose one. It gets me giddy. Pats win, Bucks win, Cowboys lose. That's a Palace trifecta, and I absolutely love it. Good showing here from Rico Dotto, who I picked up in fantasy in the last couple of weeks, and he's given me 2 huge games. And they've given me victories in the league that I'm in, where I have them. So thank you very much for that, Rico, and having that chip on your shoulder for this game. This came down to a last-minute field goal. Again, Cowboys fans were getting very high and mighty on themselves after coming off that victory against the Jets. They prop up like, yeah, we're so awesome. But then, I got my buddy who, when they lose to a team like the Panthers, they blame it, because we don't have CeeDee Lamb. And, our defense stinks. Oh, okay, so when it goes wrong for you, then you make excuses. But when you win against teams that I would say the Panthers are better than the Jets, but you make excuses. I see how it goes. I see right through you. It's pathetic. It's predictable. The Panthers win, I'll take it. I would prefer a loss for that team in that division, but any victory over the Cowboys, I'll always take. Raiders beating the Titans. That was a surprise to me. I had picked the Titans. Brian Callahan's got to be number 1 on the list to go, and I'm shocked he hasn't. I know the Titans squeaked one out last week, but it can't be that much longer that this coach is going to last. I think Cam Ward is going to be a pretty fine talent in this league. I know it's his rookie season, but I think he's going to need a different coach to lead him down the road. And the Raiders, I won't give them too much props, but I hopped off that bandwagon really quick. I thought this was going to be a team that was going to be feisty all season long. And I know we're still kind of early in the season, but yeah, I just don't trust them. Geno Smith, most interceptions in the league, and played well today, but it's the Titans, so I don't expect that every week. But they got the victory today, so that's that. And then the Packers beating the Bengals today. The Bengals with Joe Flacco. So it was nice to see some numbers from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I do have T. Higgins in one of my leagues, or I think I have him in both leagues, I think. So he put up some numbers today, so I'm happy about that. Packers, I think, coming off the bye. Josh Jacobs looked great. Again, I have him in fantasy, so that's a plus for me. This is a good win for Green Bay coming off that tie to Dallas, so they need to put themselves right back up in the NFC picture. I believe if I looked at it, we'll get into it right now, they're high up there. So good win for the Packers here on the road to the playoffs. And then Sunday Night Football, Lions dropping one to the Chiefs 30-17. Chiefs look pretty good offensively. Defense starting to pick it up somewhat, but I would probably put this more on the Kansas City offense over the Kansas City defense, which the defense had really been keeping them in games for at least a majority of last season and then up until like a couple of weeks ago this season. Lions just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't, that defense is, I'm not going to make total excuses for them, but they're also decimated as well. Have to keep it in proper context, but the Lions, up until this point had been the best team in the league and, got a little bit shown up tonight, and that's okay. You're not going to win every single game, but, when it's a big game like this against a team that's been in the Super Bowl and won a couple of them, you want to kind of put your pedal to the metal against a team like this. And the reason why I don't like them losing is because I don't like how this bodes well for my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are going to have to go to Detroit next Monday night. And with their decimated team on offense, and I think Detroit's going to play a hell of a lot better than they did tonight. So we might be in for another close, nail biter for this fan who's been going through it for like the first 5 weeks with this team. Even though they're getting the wins, they're nail biters, and they just put a lot of anxiety and stress. And don't get me wrong, when the end result is a win, like it's great, like it makes it all worth it, but you still have to go through all the motions, and I'm not ready to go through another freaking nail biter. Let's save it for January, February, right, where the stakes are really the highest. But good win for the Chiefs here, and again, that AFC West is about to become real interesting between right now the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. Chiefs still in third place, but they're climbing the ranks, so the Chargers and the Broncos better keep up. If not, the Chiefs are going to sneak in, and then they'll win the division again. And the media is they're just waiting. They're waiting to just claim the Chiefs just like the absolute team to beat. I still think the Bills, when push and shove against them, I think can beat them. But other than that, it's a toss-up. Like, I can see New England matching up well with the Chiefs and possibly the Steelers, but not sure on that one. But I would say Buffalo and New England match up well against them if it comes down to the Chiefs being the team to eliminate in the playoffs. And that's week 6. Again, there's still 2 more games to be played, but the Bills over the Falcons, I expect Josh Allen and the Bills to play better. They're coming off that loss to New England, so I'm going to go with the Bills there. I know the Falcons are a better team at home, but Buffalo favored by 3.5. Josh Allen will be Superman in this game. And then the Bears and Commanders, I got Washington. Jaden Daniels is back, and he's just going to continue to build on what he's been doing the last season. And the Bears, I'm still not fully in on. I think they're inconsistent, and I still don't think Caleb Williams is that QB. I think he's inaccurate. I think he's good on script, but once you have him improvise, and if this game is close in the second half, I just don't think he has it in him to make those plays that a Jaden Daniels would be able to. Jaden Daniels has already played in an NFC title game, so he knows the stakes, he knows the big lights, and this will be the game to start later on in the Monday night doubleheader. But that's NFL Week 6, and then later this week when I do my Diane Keaton tribute, I'll also talk about Week 7 of the NFL and preview all the games there for you. Let's turn things to wrestling now. WWE Crown Jewel was on Saturday morning from Perth, Australia. Got up super early, had my cereal. This is the second event on the ESPN platform, and based off the reviews coming off from ESPN, they graded this show a C, and a lot of insiders said that WWE wasn't happy about that, so they were going to kind of not pull all the stops out, but they had to have a better showing, now that they're on this ESPN platform and kind of available to a bigger audience. They do have to kind of put on more just stronger shows, I should say. They don't have to be all-timers, but they got to be stronger shows. And this card on paper was pretty awesome. Real quickly through some of the matches, like Roman Reigns versus Bronson Reed in an Australian street fight. I thought that was the typical WWE, smosh match. Like, I'm kind of over these stipulation matches with like street fights and stuff like that. They do them too often here and in AEW and also NXT that it's kind of just, every month we see like some type of stipulation match, whether it be a ladder or a cage. They're going to do War Games in November, which is the double cage thing, and AEW is going to do their version of it too, weeks prior. So it's like, we're getting like so much. Don't get me wrong, I love that there's so much wrestling now and so much product to watch, but that's also kind of a bad thing because you saturate a lot of these stipulations that we see. So like, let's say there hasn't been a street fight in WWE for quite some time, but I'm sure there's been one at some point at AEW during that run where they don't have one. So then by the time you do get one, it's like, well, I've seen one. And, it used to be like stipulation matches would come very rarely. And like Hell in the Cell almost becomes like a yearly thing. I don't think now in this new regime they're doing that, but, it used to be like Hell in the Cell would be like, oh my God, they're going to fight inside that thing. It's like the most barbaric match you could have, and it would come rarely, and that would make it more special. But now that we're seeing stuff like, they announced this second match with Bronson Reed and Roman Reigns to be a street fight, and I'm just like, whatever. Roman Reigns did take the loss here, though, so that's pretty good as they continue to build up the Vision group, and especially these young stars in Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, so that's good for not only for their group, but also like just for themselves as individuals, because getting a win over a superstar like Roman Reigns is a big deal. Now, there was interference and all that stuff, but whatever, he gets the W. It's on the record book, so I didn't care much for the match, but the result I did like. So Bronson Reed beating Roman Reigns on the road to Survivor Series, it's pretty good. Next, we had the Crown Jewel match for the Women's Championship, and that was Stephanie Vaquer, the Women's World Champion, versus Tiffany Stratton, the WWE Women's Champion. Now, that's a champion from Raw and champion from SmackDown. This kind of goes back to the old Survivor Series brand versus brand thing, but this time they're actually fighting for a championship belt and a ring, kind of like a Super Bowl a little bit. Match was fine. I really do like Stephanie Vaquer, and you can tell they're strapping the rocket to her. Tiffany Stratton, going into it, I thought like if she loses here, that's not going to hurt her because she's had an incredible year. She's been the WWE Women's Champion pretty much like almost the entire year now. Stephanie Vaquer just won her Women's World title a month ago at the WrestlePalooza event, and giving her the win here kind of like establishes her as one of the top women, not only on Raw, but just in the entire women's division. So I'm glad that she got the victory. And you can tell that they're just going to put her on this really high path. And, they not only, and she's getting better in her promo. Like she speaks more Spanish, but you can tell that she's putting in the effort to learn more English and speak to the crowd and have more emotion. So, because we know she has it in ring, I think, her and Io Sky are like 1 and 2 as far as like the best in ring workers from the female division. And they really believe in Vaquer right now, so they're gonna continue to build her, and I'm glad they did, because now this really establishes her as one of the top people. And Tiffany Stratton doesn't get hurt at all by losing this, but she really does need a good storyline to kind of like solidify her championship run, because up until this point, like, yeah, she's been the champion for however many months it's been, but there hasn't really been any meaningful like big feuds that like help elevate her even more. And this is where I think Becky Lynch would have played a good part in that, because I think that's her number one trait, right? Is elevating these other talents. And I think she would be a big benefactor to Tiffany Stratton. But I think once you get Bianca Belair back into the mix, I think that'll be a good thing for her. And I think also she's got to go heel at some point. I think she works better as a heel more than a baby face. I mean, she acts heelish. She's like the very rude Barbie, like kind of like, oh, whatever, like, and just has that pizzazz, not in a good girl way, like in a like I'm a bitch. So I think she works better as a heel, but Vaquer wins like that. Yeah, so that was probably the first good match of the night, and I think it could have gone a little longer, but they obviously wanted to give some extra time to the next match, which was, I believe, the match of the night, and that was John Cena versus AJ Styles for the final time. And I've enjoyed their rivalry, and this one was actually like a real rivalry. I think their series was tied up until this point. Now, it was just a very, very fun match. A lot of nods. Even AJ Styles dressed differently for this match. He wasn't wearing his normal WWE attire. He was wearing his attire that he would wear in TNA, and that's where he got most of his notoriety and rising up the ranks as a wrestler through the years was TNA. And he's been in WWE now for almost 10 years, so but he's more known as a TNA wrestler. So but that's how they built this, right? Like the best of TNA versus the best of the WWE. And very, very fun match. You know, they did a lot of cool moves in nods to other wrestlers. You know, John Cena was doing like the Chris Jericho's Walls of Jericho. He did Bray Wyatt's Sister Abigail, and AJ Styles did several different other maneuvers of opponents he's faced in TNA over the years. So it was a very back and forth, you know, typical Cena Styles match. Like, their matches were always good, and I think this is one of the underrated rivalries. Now, when you think of John Cena and top rivals, you think of like CM Punk and Edge, even Shawn Michaels. But I think in-ring wise, where you saw the both of it, because I really like his matches with Shawn Michaels, but you could tell it was more Shawn Michaels carrying those matches. In the AJ Styles feud, Cena was like par and par with him, like, and AJ Styles is kind of like Shawn Michaels 2.0, but Cena during their original run in rivalry, which was around 2016, 2017, and if you've never seen any of their matches, go back and watch their match at SummerSlam 2016. I believe that's the best match, and even counting this weekend's Crown Jewel match, SummerSlam 2016 was the absolute perfect match between those two. I know everyone's going to point to the Royal Rumble in 2017 in San Antonio, which I saw live in person. People say that's the best one in their rivalry, but for me, SummerSlam sticks out the most because it's the first time that AJ got the pin over Cena, and that really solidified him as one of the big stars on WWE level for AJ Styles. So go back. That's one of the top, not only SummerSlam matches of all time, but just one of the best matches I've ever seen, like, for as long as I've been watching wrestling. But this one was just for fun. It was for the nostalgia. It was for the crowd that was super into it. And Cena got the victory, but it didn't really matter who won because everybody wins in this. John Cena, obviously, we got only 4 more dates left with him before he retires for good. And we also found out officially this weekend, as AJ Styles was promoting the match in Australia, I believe on one of the preview shows, he did mention that in 2026, not sure when, it might be early, it might be like around WrestleMania time, that he's going to retire as well. Now, obviously, he's not going to do a big farewell tour like Cena's getting. Like, Cena's one of one. I don't think anybody's going to do this type of retirement thing again. But AJ Styles is going to call it a career as well, and I do believe him when he says he doesn't want fans to see him in a way where it's like, oh, well, that's not AJ Styles. You know, that's just like some version of him, of what he used to be. So he's going to go out on his terms, and, you know, while he's still intact, you know, he's got a family to think of now. He's had a family for a long time now, but, you know, he wants to spend time with them, and he wants to be upright, and, you know, this business is very hard to retire from, and there's people that don't know how to let it go, and then they go on and they injure themselves. Like, this life of pro wrestling does take its toll on you, and I've seen it with so many wrestlers who are now retired, and you see, like, you know, just the pain that they still go through, and from stuff that happened like years and years ago. Like, that stuff is not just for its time. Like, it hangs and lives on with you as the rest of your life. So the fact that AJ Styles is still upright, it's good for him that he's making this call. And I know fans are going to be like, oh no, not yet. But hey, man, it's a rough business, and it takes a toll on your body. And if he knows that it's time to go, it's time for him to go. Same thing with John Cena. It's the reason he said he loves WWE to his core, but he said that his body cannot handle it anymore. And as sad as that may be for the fans, like, I would prefer he just be in good health. He's had an amazing 20-plus year run. I consider him one of the greatest of all time. I don't know if I would call him the greatest, but he's out on the Mount Rushmore for me because of the longevity that he had and how long he was at the top. I'm glad that these guys are getting their chance to leave on their terms. So getting them to fight one more time on a stage like this in front of a crowd like that in Australia that was into everything that they were doing was just awesome to see. Match of the night, and this is probably what made the event. Then we had Rhea Ripley and Io Sky facing off the Kabuki Warriors in Asuka and Kairi Sane. Fine tag match. This one probably had the best story in the lead up to it. This one had been building for a while, and Asuka's jealousy of Io being friends with Rhea Ripley, stuff like that, and it finally came to a head. And Asuka and Kairi turning on Io, their longtime friend and family member. So yeah, it built up to this incredible fine tag match. Rhea and Io picking up the win. Rhea from Australia, so they were going to give the girl the hometown win. Match was fine, but I think the story, there's still a lot more to tell there, so this one's kind of like not finished yet. And then I still have to go back and watch, folks, but again, I got up super early, and I think I had only gotten like 5 or 6 hours of sleep the previous night, so by the time we got to the main event of Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, and I heard it was pretty good, but I fell asleep, not because I was bored by it, but just because I was just tired in the moment and fell asleep. And then when I woke up, it was over, and I saw that Seth Rollins had taken the win, and that's fine. The result is what it is. Based on story, it made sense. And this was probably the one, I said Rhea and Io had the best story going into it, but in terms of overall long-term story, Cody and Seth had a tremendous story going into this, because as you know, Seth was Cody's first opponent for the first 3 pay-per-view matches when he came back to the company at WrestleMania 38, which was back in 2022. So, and Cody was up 3-0 in those 3 matches against Seth. So there was all of that, and then there's this whole thing with the vision and the future and who's really running things, and all these factors playing in. Paul Heyman and lingering Brock Lesnar, stuff like that. So there's a lot of rich story there, and it helped make the match even feel more at stake than it just being for the crown jewel belt and ring. And again, Seth Rollins got the victory, so good for him, I guess. I mean, I'm really indifferent on Seth Rollins. I really don't think he's that much of an impact player in terms of big business and all that stuff. Like, he's a great wrestler and all that stuff, but as a character, I just what are you? I still don't know what he is. CM Punk said this most famously when he came back. He said, this guy's just a song. Other than that, what is he beyond that? I don't know. And I've been wondering about that for Seth Rollins for a very long time. And again, that's just my own personal taste. I appreciate what he's done in the ring, and, even in his storyline here with CM Punk, there's been a lot of good stuff in it, but him when he's by himself, or him doing his own thing and this villain role, I don't buy it. I'm kind of over it. I don't think he's as threatening as he makes himself out to be. So I don't know. A lot of it is in the portrayal, and for the longest time, the Seth Rollins character, before he started this Vision stuff, he would just come out and dance to a song, and he does his Joker laugh. So I mean, I don't get it. What are you? What do you? How are you supposed to be? That's not menacing to me. But these last couple of months with the Vision stuff, he's kind of been a little bit more Vision, not too much, but just enough. But he got the win Saturday, big deal. Now we're on the road to, what is it first? Saturday night's main event, November 1st, and then I think around the 22nd, somewhere before Thanksgiving week, will be Survivor Series, and I'm expecting some big blow-offs, especially the CM Punk feud with Seth Rollins. Hopefully that finishes, because it's been going on for almost 2 years now, so kind of over that. I want to see CM Punk get into... I'm kind of getting impatient, because the last big thing I think CM Punk needs to do, and he's also at the tail end, even though he's probably going to go a couple more years, but he's more closer to the end than the beginning. He'll admit that. But the last big match that I really want to see him have here in WWE is with Cody Rhodes. Now, they've left a breadcrumb trail of so many interactions with these guys, spread throughout, right? They haven't happened a lot, but there's been enough that there's something there, and they keep teasing it. And I know Triple H is a long story payoff kind of guy, and I'm how are we going to get there? And is it going to happen? Because if it's not, stop teasing it, because I think we had 1 or 2 this year with Punk and Rhodes, and even one where it was a backstage segment. It was real quick, and I remember Punk saying the words like, "At some point, it's going to come down to me and you," and it's like, oh man, it's right there. Like that's, to me, that's the WrestleMania 42 main event. If I booked it, especially with this long trail that you've been giving us, like pay it off already, please. Because we're one, I think, CM Punk injury away from it possibly being the end of his career. So let's appreciate him while we have him now. I'm not saying he's brittle or anything, but he is also older. And I know he's also in the best shape of his life. So I'm going to give him all that credit as well. But come on, you got to give us that match at some point. So for me, what's really going to tickle my wrestling itch is going to be that feud, if and when it happens. So if it does, great. Like, I'm going to be all 100% in on it. And if it's just a tease, well then, what do you have left for CM Punk? Like, he fought Gunther, I want to see him mix it up with some of the younger talent, but, I'm more up on the future of the female division than the men's division, so I really don't see who else, other than Braun Breaker, that CM Punk could go up against. I know he's kind of in a feud with LA Knight right now. That's a little fun to seeing them banter, go back and forth, but that's not like a long-term feud, I don't think. So for me, the play is Cody and Punk, but how do we get there? Because he has to finish off this thing with Rollins, and that's going to end up being for the world title. And if Punk wins the world title off of Rollins, then that kind of leaves him out of the chance to chase Cody for the WWE title. I don't know. But I think the way this is how I'm going to figure it out. So if in this blow-off feud with Punk and Rollins, if Punk ends up losing, then I'll know there's a chance for him to chase Cody because he can win the Rumble or the Chamber and face off. But if he wins the title off Rollins, then it's probably not going to happen. So we'll see. My bet is Cody Punk. Has to happen. All right, I went too much into the future, and we have a lot of time to talk about that stuff. Saturday night's main event and Survivor Series War Games coming up soon. So we got a couple of weeks until that, so I'll give you previews of all that. But that was Crown Jewel this weekend. Pretty solid show. Good crowd. I think it got a B rating from ESPN, so already a grade higher than WrestlePalooza. So we're still not where they want to be. I'm sure WWE wants to be getting A's, as would all of us, right? When we were in school, we wanted to get A's, but that's not always going to happen. Reality sets in. But at least this keeps WWE on its toes to deliver like a fine product. They can't just coast, which is one of the things that happened in the Peacock era, because you're not paying, or mainly when they started doing streaming, right? When they got away from pay-per-view, they got into the $9.99 model with their own network, and then on Peacock, you pay cheap for these events, so they don't put, unless it's not a big event like a WrestleMania or SummerSlam, they kind of don't really put that much focus into it, and they kind of just leave them as be. But now they really gotta sell them a little bit more, because you're paying a little bit more, right? $30 for the ESPN app to watch these things. Like, if I'm paying that kind of money, give me a good enough card. And I think they did a good WrestlePalooza, because I don't think these events need to be like the greatest thing ever, or I'm going to say it's the worst thing ever. Shows can just be straight down the middle. Now, the WrestlePalooza show was straight down the middle. I thought Crown Jewel was a little bit better. Not by that much, but a little better. And we'll see what they cook up for Survivor Series coming up in November. That's going to do it for wrestling talk and football talk. Let's take one more break, and when we get back, Assassins turns 30 here on the Robert Palace podcast. We'll talk all about it coming up. We'll be right back.
I knew this day would come. Can you at least tell me how much I was worth? We both play this game, Wrath. What kind of shoes will you be wearing when your day comes?
In the shadows of life, in the business of death, Robert Wrath is ready to stop the killing.
The history stops here. No more. I quit.
But in the eyes of a rival,
Can I help you?
I'm just looking for someone.
What's the name? I can check the plot map for you.
the real competition
He's not dead yet.
Is about to begin.
The contractor tried to kill you, buddy. That's not good. Between you and him, right?
I'm going to tear your heart out.
Why don't you just leave me out of it?
What's this for?
Just in case.
I can't shoot anybody.
You almost shot me.
I was aiming at the lamp.
Moving target. The last game ends before anyone wins.
Don't play with me now.
Warner Brothers presents Sylvester Stallone.
10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to go into that bank. He's going to be down there in the plaza somewhere in the crowd.
He'll shoot you before you go into the bank.
No. He'll wait for the prime shot.
Antonio Banderas.
A woman. It's not the same as killing a man. You have to pull the trigger a different way.
Julianne Moore.
You're a strange man, Robert Rath.
As long as you are out there, I'll never be number one. Step outside, and I'll set you free.
This fall, don't take your eyes off them
Surprise.
for a second.
Now what?
Assassins. Directed by Richard Donner.
All right, welcome back to the show. It's time for our 90s Films Turn 30 series. And this week we are tackling Assassins, starring Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, and Julianne Moore. Released on October 6th, 1995. Happy 30 years. We're a couple of days past the anniversary date, but this is all about movies that turned 30 in the year 1995. Directed by Richard Donner, who was most famously known for doing the Lethal Weapon series, one of my favorite action series of all time, with Mel Gibson, Danny Glover. So, good director there. Written by the Wachowski brothers, or now the Wachowski sisters. They're the ones most famously known for the Matrix series. They wrote this movie. My first memories of Assassins was watching this on HBO. Now, I remember very vividly the promos. So one of my favorite things about watching HBO as a kid was getting to see which movies were upcoming to that channel, and specifically the new movies. Now, I'm a big proponent of going to the movie theater, but as a kid growing up in the 90s, I remember only vaguely going to see a couple of movies like on the big screen. It wasn't really until like the 2000s when I started kind of regularly movie going. So most of the time I would either watch movies, newer ones that I was interested in on cable, and whether it be like on channels like TNT, TBS, USA Network, and then your premium channels, which every once in a while my dad would let us have like the premium ones like HBO, and then when we would get free previews of like Cinemax and Stars, and for a while we had DirecTV, and my dad was able to get like an unlocked version of it, so we had like all the movie channels and all the pay-per-view channels, so we could see all the movies. But very vividly I remember the promo for the upcoming Assassins coming to HBO, and it's a clip of Stallone and Banderas. Happens early in the movie. It's when they're in a taxi cab and they're meeting each other, and you know, Stallone smacks the window because they're in a taxi cab, and he smacks the window to try to get at Banderas, and as his hand hits like the glass or like the bulletproof like window, like the little HBO logo like appears on it. So like I just remember little things like that, and I was like super excited for it. Again, Stallone is one of my absolute favorite actors in the world. So that was my first memories of it. Like I mentioned, opened on October 6, 1995. Had a $9 million opening. I mean, this is okay for a like B level, kind of like a little bit of an action noir. Stallone did like two types of these movies which I consider like the noirs of his filmography. This one and The Specialist. So $9 million's like not bad for this, but it goes on to just gross $30 million domestically, and there's no like international numbers where I get these from. These are from boxofficemojo.com. There's no international reporting. So as far as I know, this movie only made $30 million in its whole like gross, and that's pretty low for a movie like this that's got like a big action movie star from the 80s, 90s. Stallone was pretty bankable in his day, but he did have some clunkers. And I guess from a marketing perspective, this one is considered a flop. The critics that I like to listen to during this time, and most did, everybody, but now like everybody has a blog, right? And a review site and a podcast, including the one you're listening to right now. But we all used to listen to Siskel and Ebert, the guys that do the 2 thumbs up, and you'd see them on posters and the movie boxes, the VHSs, the DVDs, stuff like that. They both gave this movie 2 thumbs down. They liked the performances in this movie, but they absolutely just trashed the screenplay, which was written by the Wachowskis. And I'm going to agree with them there. The script is not very strong. You can tell this is a very B movie, and if you don't have the patience for it, it does become a bit of a slog. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes, somewhere around that range. And if you listen to me regularly now, as a grown adult, I'm very wary of movies that are super long. I used to be all about it. Like, yeah, the movie's like close to. I wanted Batman to be 3 hours. You know, like I know we almost got that a couple of years ago, but you know nowadays it's like, oh man, like what happened to the 90-minute movie, hour 50-minute movie? And I think back then more like, unless it's like a classic like The Godfather or you know whatever, you can feel a movie's length, and this is a movie where you can definitely feel the length. So 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. They did not recommend this. 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the critics did not like this. 45% from the audience, and just going based off of what the box office has, the audience seemed to agree with the critics here, and majority of people did not like this movie. I like to give a little bit of nuance. You know, it's easy to just say, "Oh, this movie's trash" or whatever, but there's also, you can find stuff in bad movies. So overall, I'm a Stallone guy, so like I'm kind of ride or die. I'm a little bit biased, but I can also recognize that there's some movies where I know they're not as strong, and this is definitely one of those. But I do want to start with one of the things that I do like about this movie, and that is Antonio Banderas. He's like the absolute MVP of this movie. He is so incredibly over the top, very funny in this movie. Menacing when he has to be, but for the most part, he's super like charismatic. And this is, you know, I haven't really seen much of his filmography, but for my personal taste, I loved him in this role, and he's kind of the reason like the movie kind of like rolls along and it's very watchable. Because although I love Stallone and he's like one of my absolute favorites, this is probably one of the more boring characters that he plays, because he's very, very toned down in this movie, as Gene Siskel says, like the performance, and he liked that out of him. And me, I'm like, oh, it's Stallone. Like, you don't have to be the super macho guy, but you can have a little bit more charisma. And this character speaks very low in the movie. And there's at times where, like, I was watching this with subtitles, because there's at times where Stallone's talking and it's like, dude, I get being a quiet person, but you're also like, I can't understand what you're saying because you're speaking so low. So, you know, not only is he low in character, but he's also like low in volume, and that's like it doesn't match, and it kind of like weighs the movie down a little bit. So yeah, Antonio Banderas is incredible in this. He's like he's almost like a cartoonish villain, because, and this gets into one of the other things I liked about the movie. There's a couple of sequences in this film. There's one at the beginning, one in the middle, and then of course at the very end in the climax of the movie. He gets into these like situations where it's like, how did this guy survive like any of the shit that happened to him? Like, you know, if you want to ground this, make this a more action drama, you know, this some of the stuff that happens to him in this movie would have killed him. So the first one is when they're, as I mentioned in that promo for HBO, like they first meet in a taxi cab and they get to know each other a little bit and their motives and all that stuff. There's a point where Antonio Banderas is trying to escape the taxi cab, or at least try to get to the front of it to kill Stallone's character. And as they're driving, Stallone notices a big bus, and he drives the car like directly through the side of the bus with Antonio Banderas hanging out on the side of it. And Roger Ebert, in his review, which you can find this on YouTube, says like, well, you know, I thought if you smash a car to the side of a bus with somebody hanging out on the edge of it, you'd kill somebody. But I guess in this movie they can get away with it and nothing happens. And, you know, and that's the first one where Banderas just escapes it, and he's like, you know, making all these, oh my God, I'm going to die. And, you know, just very cartoonish, but it's so over the top, and then you kind of enjoy it, even though he's like playing the villain in this. The second one is when they're at an apartment building, and I believe they're on the like third or fourth floor, somewhere up high. And Stallone, they get into like this gunfight, right? They're in the apartment, in one of the apartments, because they're chasing the Julianne Moore character, who's she's fine in this. They're chasing her down, and they get into another gunfight, and Stallone, I believe, breaks like a gas line and lights everything up to a point where it's gonna shoot at Banderas, and he grabs a table to like block the fumes and the flames that are coming directly at him, and he explodes out of the building through that window. And, you know, from the way it's shot and the way the body falls, it's like, oh man, he's gonna absolutely splat, and that's the end of his character. But it's shot in slow motion, so when you see Banderas, like, as he's falling, the way they shoot him is that he completely does a small roll up and just lands on the street like nothing, and then he just like disappears, and then we don't see him again until like the third act of the movie. And then of course the third act happens in a hotel. I forgot where they are in the country. They're not in the US, they're out somewhere in overseas. And they're in this like broken down hotel, and it's just like a bunch of different floors, but everything's all cracked and broken. And as this final like shoodout showdown is happening, Banderas like just gets beaten to shit, and then he just gets taken out like nothing. He dies in this movie, so, you know, spoilers, sorry, it's been 30 years, but just a very cartoonish, over the top, but it's part of the reason why I like this movie, because he's so fun and electric in it, and he steals the movie for the entire thing. What I didn't like, obviously, is the length of the movie. Now, the first hour, there's all this stuff happening, and, you know, you're seeing Banderas and Stallone go at it. So the taxi cab scene, and then the apartment scene, all of that happens within the first hour. And then you get into the final half of the movie, and it's like taking forever, because they're just trying to get money off of an exchange, and it's taking place at a bank. And Stallone is like, and the movie even physically shows you like that it's like, hey, this is becoming erratic and frustrating, because Banderas is trying to assassinate Stallone coming out of that bank as he's waiting for his money, because he wants to kill him to be the number one assassin, right? But there's a scene in there where Banderas is sitting on the top of that hotel, and he's just like waiting for Stallone, and he's sweating, like physically disgustingly sweating, and you can feel it as an audience member watching it. Like, just even watching it back, I'm like, oh man, this is so frustrating to watch, because he's just sitting there, he's sweating, nothing's happening, he's waiting for him to show up. And I never understood this in the movie, because Stallone knows that he's going to gun him down. And even when Banderas goes to check on him in the bank, like, he knows, they both know what the scene is going to happen. And yet it still plays off like some surprise when Stallone finally leaves the bank and he sees like Banderas is going to try to shoot him down. He gives like this look like, oh my God, what's happening? It's like, dude, you knew this was going to happen, and why are you acting surprised? So, and again, this all takes place. This is the final act of the movie, and it's taking forever. Like the first hour like flies by, but then like the next hour and like whatever it is, 10 minutes or whatever, takes just so damn long to get going. And then by the time the movie ends, and there's like a little surprise revelation at the end of it, but it just doesn't play well. Then the movie just ends. Yeah, I left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I own the movie because I'm a Stallone head, and it's just part of the collection, and I can watch it because of Banderas, but overall, this is probably this is my least favorite in his filmography. Not one that I would highly recommend, but if you're just going through being a cinephile and trying to learn about different actors and stuff like that, like, sure, watch it. But it's got a young Julianne Moore, who started to pop up a lot in the mid-90s. You know, I remember her from 9 Months, and then later on in Magnolia. And, you know, in my early adolescence, I did enjoy a nice redhead. So I had a little crush on her, you know. Redheads were kind of like my appeal at the time. So, yeah, Julianne Moore's fine in this, but she's obviously been in a lot more better stuff. She's an award-winning actress. She's been in just very high-profile movies, and this is like the start of her career. I don't want to say full-on start, but very early on when she starts to get kind of like very recognizable as a name. So I guess doing a movie like this with Stallone was like a big deal in her career, but she's fine in the movie. The chemistry with Stallone is not really there. So that didn't work. And in the trailers and stuff, as I was watching back and just doing my research, like the trailers make it look like they had a romantic relationship, but the movie doesn't really play it off that way. I know they share a kiss in the movie, but even then it just kind of like is just there. So they're kind of more just like acquaintances a little bit, but yeah, I just didn't feel any chemistry at all with them. So yeah, those are the things that I liked about the movie, and then the things that I just didn't like. So there's nuance there. Like, I'm not gonna completely bash this movie because I think it's watchable. I probably rated on my Letterboxd, I think it was like 2 or 2.5. You know, usually for me 3 and on is good, but anything from 2 to 2.5, it's like barely watchable, or at least watchable in a sense. But it's a very flawed movie, and again, very, very tough to get through, at least in the final hour plus. Who would I cast if this was being done today? I'd probably look at, for the Banderas role, I was thinking about this a little bit, Austin Butler, I think would be a good look for this. You know, you can see him being all sweaty, and even if they redid like the whole third act and him just being like a cartoonish guy that just gets away through all of these sequences that happen to him, I would like to see him play that. He played a little bit crazy I kind of picture the way he did in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like that kind of character, but just amped up a little bit more. So that would be fun in the Banderas role. And then for the Stallone role, I would probably go with like, and especially now since he's lost the weight, kind of looks slimmed down, could play a little bit more toned down and not be as over the top or just be as macho. So let's see Dwayne Johnson do a quiet role like this, you know, because he doesn't really have to do much. And Stallone, you know, this is my least favorite Stallone, but he's still like got a presence, and you know, you have to at least have that in your hero character. So Dwayne Johnson's got presence. So I like to see him in this a little bit more toned down, not really saying much. Because he does talk in most of his movies, very talkative, very charismatic, obviously. But I like to see him in this and be toned down, just kind of reacting to everybody else, and him just being like, kind of standing there, giving you the serious face, maybe smirk at you every once in a while. And then for the Julianne Moore role, obviously you could do like, Dwayne Johnson's usually go-to person has been Emily Blunt, but you know, I like to see maybe, I know she probably wouldn't do this role now, but maybe like an Anne Hathaway to kind of give it a little bit more flavor. Like she could be like the charismatic person, like, and Julianne Moore's charismatic enough, but I think Anne Hathaway could kind of give it a little bit more gravitas and make it a little bit more fun. Maybe could make that third act a little bit more entertaining, because since the Stallone character is kind of very toned down, and Banderas, they only cut to every now and then. The third act is really a lot of Julianne Moore and Stallone just interacting, but like I said, the chemistry isn't there, and I think Anne Hathaway can really make a movie work with anybody, so you need somebody in that role that can just kind of make the movie flow. So yeah, that's probably who I would cast. I mean, I thought about it very briefly, so don't kill me for the casting. It's just, you know, a what if. Today, would this movie be released as a theater release, or would it be a streamer? And 100% this would be a streaming movie. I can see this on Netflix getting lost in the algorithm and just being a movie that if you stumble across it, you stumble across it. And if not, if you ask somebody about it, you'd be like, what is that? I don't think it would be given the green light by a major studio, even with the stars that I would have attached to it in the present day. And lastly, has this movie aged well in the 30 years since its released from October 6, 1995? I'm going to say it was a movie for its time. You know, we still get our B movies here and there, but, you know, a lot of the stuff is very dated in this movie. A lot of early Mac computers or Apple computers, laptops, floppy disks are a big deal in this movie. And me personally, just for the nostalgia factor, I enjoyed watching them, you know, do all that stuff, checking out floppy disks and stuff like that. But it's definitely dated, and somebody let's say a young person watching it now would be like, what the hell is all this shit that they're doing? And there's so much like work you would have to do physically, as opposed to like you could probably do Assassins. You could do everything now through your phone or whatever. All the stuff that they're doing in that movie, you can do it through your phone, and it kind of takes away a little bit of the fun out of it, and a lot of the intense like work that they got to do, especially like when Julianne Moore is, when we get introduced to her, she's trying to get some money from people, and there's this whole operation that happens in a hotel, and it's like, man, it would be so much easier with today's technology, right? But that eliminates half of the fun of the movie. So yeah, I think it's a relic for its time. Like that type of movie you can still make in 2025, but it's going to be a streamer, and it's not going to get that big wide theatrical release. Plus, also, I don't think, even if you did release it in theaters, I don't think it would do well. It's not as big of a sell. You know, how many Assassins movies have we gotten, or that type of movie? There's been so many. You would have to put a real big hook on it, but I'm not sure. But anyways, that's Assassins. 90s films turn 30. I'm glad that, you know, not all of these movies are going to be like 100% gems, right? There's going to be some clunkers in there, and that's okay, but we can still talk about it and, you know, have some nostalgia for it. And, you know, I'm a big Stallone fan, so you'll see more of his movies popping up on here as we continue on with this series. And it's nice to look back on just on anything 90s. Again, it's my favorite decade of movies. It's the true, like, you would go see a movie because of the movie star and not really so much what it was about. And really, when I look back and I watch Assassins, what am I watching it for? I'm watching it for Antonio Banderas, and Stallone's one of my favorites, and that's that. I'm not really watching because of what the plot of the movie is. And now sometimes that can work well for a movie, like where the performances are enough. And sometimes, like, you need plot, you need story for it to be like a whole complete experience. For me, it all just depends. So here, like, the performances are good enough, but it's still a slog to sit through. So, yeah, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. They're not all going to be winners, and that's okay. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Robert Palace Podcast. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. You can find this podcast on mostly any platform where you listen to your podcast, whether it be at home or driving to work or going to the gym, or you're at the gym, you drive home from work. I just greatly appreciate any time you all can listen to this and just let me chat about pop culture and sports and professional wrestling. It's the stuff that I love to talk about. I do run an Instagram account for this podcast. You can search it at Instagram at Robert Palace Podcast. And I'm very active on there. I'm always posting stuff, whether it's upcoming movie posters, stuff going on in the NFL, facts, score updates, and all that stuff. I'm very active on that page, so if you want to give me a follow there, I'd greatly appreciate it. You can also DM me through there if you have questions or anything like that. I highly doubt it, but you never know. My DMs are open to anybody. If you want to talk about anything, or ask a question, or if you want to be a guest on the show, I always welcome that as well. As I mentioned, I'm recording this on a late Sunday night going into Monday, so there'll be another episode this week where I'll talk about Diane Keaton more at length, and I'll preview NFL Week 7. And, coming up on my 39th birthday, so I'm sure I'll discuss some other stuff. I always like to do kind of like a birthday episode, so maybe I'll make that the theme along with... But it really should be about Diane Keaton, which, rest in peace. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you later on this week. Take care.
A top assassin wants out.
No more. I'm gone.
Another wants in.
I studied everything you ever did.
But to be number one, he must eliminate the competition. Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas. Assassins. Directed by Richard Donner. Rated R. Starts Friday, October 6th at a theater near you.